Washington football. Woo!
My bad, the shit's fucking up.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host Kyle, and I am joined by my co-host Michael Reed. You just saw Hall dip out because his microphone is messing up a little bit. But thank you for tuning in. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. Title of tonight's episode is The Big Test. Play on words with the big city, with Washington traveling up north to face the Jets tomorrow for joint practices ahead of Saturday's game at noon, going against the Jets, obviously in the first preseason game. But Callow, thank you for joining us on this fantastic Wednesday evening, brother. How are you doing?
I'm good, guys. Always happy to come on when I can these days.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So the first question we got to get into, Callow, is Jayden Daniels is starting in this preseason game. Obviously, in the unofficial depth chart that was released yesterday, Jayden Daniels was listed as the number one quarterback, which isn't crazy. I do want to put out there, this is the unofficial depth chart. Okay, like they can mess with it as much as they want to. I'm sure they did it with a smirk on their face. But that being said, how much do you think Jayden Daniels is going to play, and how much do you think he should play? And off of that, what are your expectations for Jayden Daniels in the offense on Saturday?
As far as how much he should play, or I think he's going to play, I would hope he gets a quarter. Let's go 3 to 4 drives at best here. Okay. Before they named him the starter on my show, I had kind of said maybe you rotate him and Mariota in a little bit, because I kind of want to see how they both work with the ones and the twos, and I want to see some different lineman combinations. So I'm hoping a quarter total, and even if we see a little bit of a rotation, I wouldn't be mad at that. When it comes to expectations, you guys know how this is. It's preseason. We're going to get very vanilla looks. Maybe they give him a little bit of RPO or one play or something like that, but you guys know how this is. They're not going to, put him in harm's way at all whatsoever. We're going to see some very basic play designs. I'm not expecting much, but from everything we've heard from him, and even unprompted from coaches, the players, whatever, he seemingly has a grasp on this offense. So I'm kind of just looking to see if he can, get in and out of the huddle, not take any penalties, and that he can run this offense crisply. And I don't think that's a high expectation, but I think it's about all we can ask for at this point in a preseason game.
Yeah, and we mentioned Kyle mentioned the unofficial depth chart. Were there any surprises to you on that depth chart?
I mean, it's got to be Coleman, right? I mean, I think that's all of us, right? I mean, the fact is, we all know they couldn't fix this roster in one offseason. I mean, that was what we all knew. But we also knew they have 3 needs at 3 of the most important positions, not named quarterback. That's edge rusher, left tackle, and corner. And if they happen to find a solid starter, a rookie, to play this left tackle, I mean, that's something that's house money, guys. Like, that's the definition of house money. If he can just be a solid to good starter. I was watching Fred Smoot actually on one of the Commanders videos. It was him, Michael Jenkins, and Bram Weinstein. And Smoot said, don't come for him, but he said his physical makeup reminds him of Trent Williams. And he made sure to say, he's not Trent. Don't say I'm calling him a future Hall of Famer, but he said the way he looks, the way he moves, the way his body type is, it reminds him of Trent. Is he going to be a dog like Trent? That remains to be seen. But I think that's the one that I saw that went, oh, okay, if this can actually work out, this would be a huge win for them for the future.
Yeah,
could you imagine walking away with a franchise quarterback and a franchise left tackle in the same draft?
Ridiculous. Would be ridiculous.
I could see what Fred Smoot is saying, because the one thing about Trent was Trent had the body weight, had the size of a prototype left tackle, but also had the athleticism to be fast out in space, even running with wide receivers and running backs on screenplays downfield. I mean, we can all remember those highlights. And like Brandon Coleman, didn't he have like a 9.9 RAS score or a 10? Didn't he have something crazy like that? Sorry, Hall.
At guard, it was a 10. Yeah, but then left tackle, it was still 9 point something.
No, I'm glad you mentioned Coleman, because I think tomorrow with the joint practices against the Jets is going to be definitely one of those keys that kind of sees where he's at his development, as far as like maybe getting that week 1 start and possibly being that franchise guy going forward. But speaking of those practices and players that are going to be going one-on-ones, 11-on-11s tomorrow, who are some guys or one guy, whoever it may be, either side of the ball, that you're most looking forward to kind of hearing or seeing, whatever it may be, on their progress and what they're doing against the Jets offense or defense?
Honestly, I'll just do a generic overview. Every offensive lineman is on notice for me. Like, I just want to see how all of them are going to do. I want to see the different combinations. That's the first one to knock it out. The other one is I want to see how Emmanuel Forbes reacts to this, unofficial depth chart. I mean, he's a clear-cut backup at the moment. Does that light a fire under him? Do we see somebody scrap? Like, I know he's a smaller dude, but I think he's the one that I'm looking at. Let's see how he responds to this, because I think coaches use these unofficial depth charts throughout preseason leading up to the regular season to see how they can motivate a guy. Maybe it brings something else out of them. He's not trying to bury him, but he's saying, you got to work for this a little bit. You're a first-round pick from last year, but you're not our first-round pick. I'm looking at Forbes to see how he does against those Jets wide receivers. And look, it's going to be the only time during practice where Aaron Rodgers is going to be thrown against these guys. So that's going to be kind of the look here too, is with A-Rod actually throwing, I want to see how not only him, but the rest of the corners actually stack up, because once we get into the game, Rodgers isn't actually going to play. So I'm looking really at the DBs and the offensive line, but the DBs, I think, because they're going to get a look at a future Hall of Famer, let's see how he looks against some pretty good wide receivers.
Yeah, and of course, those wide receivers are a great group themselves. I saw a video of Garrett Wilson yelling at Aaron Rodgers, probably something about ayahuasca, but we don't need to get into that. Callow, the biggest news from this week was that the Commanders announced, I mean, I'm not sure if they announced it, but the media got traction of it, that they were out on Brandon Aiyuk. What do you make of that kind of statement? Because it brings me back to the quote of Adam Peters saying that some positions that are viewed as weaknesses are actually strengths in their eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he was referencing wide receiver there. The way I have tackled this offense the entire offseason is everyone gets a mulligan for last year. I think we didn't realize how bad things were with Eric Bieniemy day to day. Like, Ron did a great job covering up the BS of that offense day to day. And I think one of those players that gets a mulligan of all mulligans is Jahan Dotson. Mm-hmm. And I think we've seen flashes from him. Like, we saw when Heineke could get him the ball his rookie year, he was making guys look stupid left and right when he got the ball, right? And so I think what Peters and the rest of the front office is looking at is going, we'd love to get a number one wide receiver like Aiyuk, but there's some potential here. And same thing as I said before, they're not fixing everything in one off season. So let's see what you've got here in terms of Dotson, in terms of McLaurin finally, hopefully having a real quarterback. He's had, 11 different guys throw him the ball in his career. Let's see what this unit can do with those two at the top, whether it's McCaffrey, whether it's Brown, whether it's Zaccheaus. I mean, Zaccheaus is on the official depth chart as the third wide receiver.
Yeah.
Let's see what they can do as a unit. I think they're looking at it as, we'd love to have Aiyuk, but we are not willing to give up what they want with the unit that we have at the moment. That's how I'm kind of looking at it.
Okay, because like I know Kimberly Martin was on ESPN, and she made a comment that the Commanders were never really in it with Brandon Aiyuk. And like, obviously that's something that's new to us because we thought the entire time they would be. Is that kind of consistent with what you've heard?
So what I have heard is that the 49ers, they are looking at this year as, we want to win a Super Bowl. It's the last year we're going to have Brock Purdy on a rookie deal. We could do that with or without Aiyuk, but if we trade him, we need something back. And so that is pretty much what I've heard, is that if you're calling them, they are coming for your number one wide receiver. Well, if you're calling us here in Washington, they're asking for Terry McLaurin. And I just simply don't think they're ready to move on from McLaurin like that. This fan base, the front office, everybody, he's the leader of all leaders. Is Aiyuk better than McLaurin? Yeah. I mean, like, let's admittedly say that, but I don't think they're in the business of moving on from McLaurin and getting Aiyuk.
Yeah. Well, I know Kyle's about to fight you over that. Kyle's like, nobody's better than Terry.
You can fight me.
One surprise kind of on the depth chart was Dante Fowler listed as the number one outside linebacker. I know him and Jamin are both going to kind of be playing these hybrid roles. Is Jamin in any real danger of not making the team, do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. I know they backed off of him being the whole edge rusher thing. Like, that was the kind of the buzzword of the offseason, right? Was, we're going to test him out at edge. Well, now there's really not a spot for him at edge. I think they have enough there that they're not going to put him there. I think there's a danger of him there. This always goes down to the old, does he play special teams in the preseason? Does he take that role on, and does he play well? We've seen the dude when he sprints, he's a missile, right? So the one thing he can do is literally run down the field and tackle somebody. So if he can make an impact on special teams, I think he's got a spot here on lock. I put it as, like, maybe not even 50-50, like a 60-40. They've said all the right things about Jamin, and just that, like, they need to coach him up. He needs to be put in the right position. the good thing with Jamin as opposed to Forbes too is we've seen Jamin flash it over the years. So does a proper coaching staff that can actually put him in the better positions than the last one, maybe they can use him a little bit better. Let's be honest here too. This always turns into a thing during training camp as well. If they cut him, is it the end of the world when it comes to like the depth chart or like how the season's going to play out? Like if they cut Jamin Davis and he ends up taking on somewhere else really well, good for him. I'm not broken up about it either way. But I think this coaching staff does see some potential in him. And I think that's what it's going to tell you if they do keep him around. It means that they're seeing some growth out of him.
Yeah, I mean, as many times as a player's been cut here or left here and then went on to greater, bigger, better things, we should be used to that by now. So if it happens, it's good for Jamin. Another thing that surprised me on the depth chart was the unofficial depth chart was, and we haven't really heard his name a lot throughout camp because he got a lot of pre-draft, or not pre-draft, but pre-camp and OTAs, whatnot, hype is Luke McCaffrey. And they had De'Ami Brown as listed as the third receiver right now. And my question is, do you think that by week one, Luke will be in that third spot, or do you think that De'Ami is finally gotten or is going to get over that training camp, OTAs kind of like hype, like this might be the year, and then when the real games start, he kind of disappears? So do you think that De'Ami, this is kind of his year to prove it, or do you think Luke McCaffrey is going to eventually overtake that third spot?
I think we got to remember with Luke that he's a mid-round pick, and so the expectation is because of his name. I mean, mostly, right? And with Brown, not unlike Jamin, but I think he's flashed more than Jamin has. I mean, he's had a 2-touchdown game in his career. That's not, nothing to sneeze at for him. I think same thing. He belongs in that mulligan category with this offense last year. Like I thought De'Ami was going to take a jump next year, but instead everyone took a step back, right? I actually, we were doing bold prediction on Bram's show, and I said De'Ami was going to be the one that gets cut. And I'm completely wrong at this point. He was taking reps at number 1 a couple of weeks ago. I think he does make the jump to at least be a consistent player. It seems like Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Witt Jr., but both of these coordinators are putting these players in the best positions possible, unlike the last regime where it was kind of like, oh, well, we need a ball-hawking corner. We're going to just start him and see what happens. It seems like they're actually coaching these guys up a little bit better than what Rivera and company were doing. So I say yes, I think he does make that jump. Doesn't mean any knock on McCaffrey. We know that if you're not really one of those number one type guys or a Sean McVay mid-round wide receiver, it takes a little time for you to catch on. So I'm not even going to be worried about McCaffrey if he ends up getting buried on the depth chart a little bit. But yes, I've been impressed with Brown so far. I think he's really responded well.
Yeah, and I think on Twitter the other day that De'Ami Brown has been catching like 500 balls after practice every single day. And so
Kyle does that too.
Obviously working hard, that's something that people can't take away from you regardless of where it is. You keep working hard, good things are going to happen for you, right? Callow, to wrap this up, only a couple more questions for you. But on Saturday, going against the Jets at noon, who needs a big game in that preseason game? Obviously, the starters, this isn't a huge opportunity for the starters to really showcase because, like you say, it's going to be vanilla. And so it's going to come down to just man-on-man, you being able to win your matchups. Who's somebody in that game who's going to finally have the light, the pedestal, the stage to be able to prove themselves? Who needs it the most?
Who needs it? I mean, I feel like the depth chart's pretty much there. I'm going to go back to the well and go with Forbes. You know, he's going to go against backup. He's going to go up against backups, right? So you better play pretty well at whoever those backup wide receivers are. And not only that, too, even if he does go out there with the starters, Aaron's not playing. So you're going up against, I think it's Tyrod, right? Isn't Tyrod Taylor their backup up there, I think? So either way, you're not going against like a future Hall of Famer. I point to Forbes because I think they've said all the right things about Jamin, but like they've been pretty quiet about Forbes. When Quinn is asked about him, he says the right things, but Forbes is the guy that I think is really, I mean, I don't think he's going to get cut, but I think he's the guy that if he doesn't have a good camp, he's definitely on the outs coming into next year.
My man. And then for joint practices, myself, I personally believe that joint practices are way more productive for the first team than actual preseason games. And no disrespect to the guys on the lower end of the roster who get this opportunity, of course. I didn't always forget to put in that caveat. But so for joint practices, what are the goals for joint practices going against the Jets for you?
Offensive line chemistry, number one.
Okay.
Let's see what those combinations are. How does Coleman do against other guys? I mean, it's not like he's gone against nobodies here in Washington, but how does he kind of handle that role of being a legit left tackle against a really good Jets pass rush? I think that's number one. And then I want to see, I mean, it's a cop out, but it's the easy one. Let's see what Jaden Daniels does against some guys that aren't in burgundy and gold, right? One of the things that I've pointed out at this training camp is we get a little caught up in, hey, he's been playing so well. He's been putting balls in positions where only the Commanders wide receivers can get it, right? Well, let's be honest here. The DB situation here isn't the best. It's not like there's this amazing cornerback that's locking guys down. I want to see how he does against another set of corners, specifically a really good one up there in New York. Let's see how Jaden does against some guys in some other uniforms and in those situational, plays that he can run. They're going to run a few of those a few times. Let's see how he does in those red zone drills. I want to see what Jaden does with this offense in some of those high pressure situations that aren't in the game, but they can keep running back. So Jaden and the offensive line is really who I'm looking for in these practices.
Now, I'm going to throw this question out there, but I'm sure it runs congruent or parallel to what you just said. Biggest battles in joint practices that you'd be paying attention to, would it be the same of what you just said?
Offensive line and defensive line, 100% is what I'm looking at here. We haven't really mentioned them, but I want to see how, the two new pass rushers do as well against that Jets offensive line. We've talked about, it feels like a decade of Allen and Payne should open things up for the guys on the outside. It just never has really worked out that way. Let's see if a different scheme can light a fire under those guys. Let's see if we can see an Allen, Payne, Newton type line and see what happens there. I mean, I've heard Newton looks really good, that people really like his work ethic. And even Duran has brought him up unprompted that he really likes him. So let's see if maybe those three guys together can make a little bit of noise. But let's see how that defensive line is. We haven't heard too much about them throughout camp.
No, that's absolutely true. But real quick, Coach Gibbs and Darryl Green came by practice yesterday. What have you heard about that kind of thing going on? What was your biggest takeaway from it, just seeing all the videos coming from it and what it truly means to the team?
With Gibbs, anytime that guy's around,
right,
people drop whatever they're doing. And the ownership group, I knew this before they even officially had the team, that they had him in the fold talking to them. I mean, not that they need a history lesson by any means, but they wanted him to be a part of all of this. And this is just kind of a part of this, right? I think he was at a game last year. He was at a game the year before as well. So he's also making himself, a little bit more available. I think he tried to distance himself from Snyder a little bit. And now I think he's trying to, stick around. And especially now with this new ownership group, they're trying to honor the past more, right? They're retiring numbers. They never retired numbers before. Granted, they started retiring them probably for the wrong reasons. But once you start one, you got to start, getting these legends in. And that's where Darryl comes in. And Darryl's in the area, man. So, I'm not surprised he stopped in. His numbers obviously getting retired this year. And, all of those guys, I think, are now they're mending the fence for all of them, because I think for the longest time they tried to support Dan, they tried to support the team, but at some point you just kind of have to stop coming around when the losing won't stop. And so I think this is just a part of that fence mending where the legends are kind of coming back and being back in the fold.
It was something that was obviously very necessary, of course. Callow, I can't thank you enough for joining us on this Wednesday evening, brother. I know it's kind of been a stormy, dark kind of day. But before you get out of here, just like to plug your social media handle and your show, just in case anybody watching hasn't followed you yet, sir, and would like to.
Of course, you can hit me at Mike_Callow. That's both on Twitter and Instagram. ESPN 630 is where I am at. We just tweaked our lineup, so I'm moving to afternoon drive, so I'm 3 to 5 every day. Bram Weinstein, voice of the team, now moves to 11 a.m. His podcast goes up right at noon as well. We're also on YouTube now, so you see this beautiful hat collection behind me. You'll see that almost every single day whenever I'm on with Bram as well. And I can't hype it up enough every time I'm on with you guys. Bram joins me every Friday, every Monday. So before the game, after the game, he always has the insight. He talks to the coaches, all of that fun stuff as the voice of the team. He has an insight that no one else has. So check us out.
My man, can't thank you enough, Callow. Go and enjoy your week, and hopefully everyone well wishes for these joint practices, the big test up in New York. Have a great week, brother.
Appreciate it, guys.
Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, we just talked to the man, Mr. Mike Callow. Always appreciate Callow's time. Fantastic voice himself, as much as Bram Weinstein is considered. But speaking of great voices, I got to be able, on the way to work yesterday, listen to the Hail Tales episode, the podcast, highlighting the replacement 1987 year when they won the championship, and talking about the replacement players for those 4 weeks. And it was, dude, honestly, I was very impressed. Tim Hightower doing a great job of getting all those guys together. It's crazy to hear that some of those replacement players were working construction, were working managers at grocery stores, being brought in. But one of the craziest,
Keanu Reeves was one of them. That's crazy.
Yeah. And the one thing that was crazy to me was like just in the contrast to today's NFL, where Joe Bugle is like goes up and to punch the offensive lineman in the stomach to show him how to punch the pads of a player that's coming up. And he said when he punched him, it was all just fat. And I imagine that's what all of us can kind of relate to in a way. But it's just like imagine that going down today. That would be viral. That would be something that would go skyrocket. This not happening.
Coach would be fired the very next day.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, he's body shaming the guy off the street. You can't do that. Not in today's.
Absolutely. Now, boys, to wrap up this episode, let's answer some fan questions. And the first one, the early bird gets the worm. We got to give this to our boy Tony Franchise, who was up early, just like I was, and had a fantastic question submitted in to us. If I can find it here. Here we go. His question is, Hall, first with the O-line being nicked up, do you think we should bring a few more bodies in for camp that could possibly make the roster?
I don't know. Cool if you can make the roster as a guy that gets added on late, then more power to you, definitely. But as you can see today, we just signed a tackle because of I guess the word was
Alex Taylor.
Coleman had an ice pack on his shoulder the other day. Who knows if it's that serious? I'm going to guess probably not because nothing's really came out other than that. So, yeah, I would say that it was smart to sign a tackle, get some other guys in there, get some more reps. Like the same thing they did with Jonathan Allen, where they signed a defensive tackle that was used to play for the Chiefs, a couple other teams, just to kind of do that workload management thing, get guys more reps, get a little bit more rest, keep guys healthier for the upcoming season in week 1 in a couple weeks. So, yeah, definitely a smart thing that they did by signing a tackle today, and I wouldn't be surprised if by next week they signed another guy or two going into the Miami game. Just to kind of keep guys fresh.
Yeah, and a great question by Tony because obviously they lost Alex Kwengbu, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm saying it wrong, I'm so sorry, Alex. But he got injured. They put him on the injured list. And they also brought in J.C. Hassanas. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that correctly. But so they've added depth here, Tony. And so, you'd want to say that they're going to be able to make the roster, of course. But I think this goes into what Coach Quinn was kind of talking about with joint practices because he was saying that there's going to be guys having an uptick in activity during practices. So during the game, they're not going to have as much playing time. So what I think he's saying is the starters are most likely going to be getting a heck of a lot of snaps during joint practices, not going to be playing that much in the game to give them that kind of rest day. So this is a way to add bodies to the roster so you can actually have guys play a plentiful amount in the game and then after and possibly in the second game like against Miami as well. And because of course those injuries play a lot into it. The other big news is them releasing Armani Rogers, who a lot of the fan base was thinking that this could be a guy that could actually be something from the Ron Rivera era. Obviously, of course, they thought otherwise. I think it's been difficult for him to come back from that Achilles injury that he had. But to answer your question, Tony, I think at this point the roster is kind of locked in. But if somebody of, let's say, high on their not free agent board, just on their board altogether gets released, I don't think that they're going to look the other way, so to speak. I think that they're going to add some more fish to the pond. What about you, Reed? Sorry. I know I'm putting you to sleep. Whatever.
I'm sorry. Are you done talking? Hell yeah.
My man.
Reed. You guys answered it for fucking 10 minutes. I'm good.
Reed, this next question from Tony. How good was it to see the video of Coach Gibbs meeting with the team that he fired up?
Didn't watch it. Next question. I'm just kidding. No, it was sick. It was tight. I do love that. Love seeing Joe Gibbs, Darrell Green there fucking getting fired up like that, especially coming from the last regime. And, they always tried to involve Joe Gibbs and stuff, but it was always just like, oh, look, Coach Gibbs is here. Cool. It was never anything big. But seeing Joe Gibbs getting fired up, getting the boys going, love that, dude. Joe Gibbs is so cool. He's such a nerdy guy, but he's so cool. He's our savior, man. Gotta feel good about that.
Yeah, I love the fact that him telling him to shut up like he was still a coach, laughing about it. At least he's still got a sense of humor, right? And one of the things from Dan Quinn's press conference before that practice was saying that he actually drove up to Charlotte to meet with Coach Gibbs when he was a coach in Atlanta. He wasn't even here yet, and just that respect factor of him wanting to go hear from Coach Gibbs, and that's in that breath. It is really cool to hear that they already have a relationship, because I think that's obviously something that's pivotal that we have said, every coach here. Of course, you don't want to hold on to the past, But if you have somebody like that at your disposal who just pisses winning, everything he touches turns to gold. That's somebody you really want to be able to pick the mind of on a daily routine, good routine.
Yeah, like you said, it's just like Callow said, it's just good to have the legends around, the guys that paved the way for hopefully this next new generation of guys that are going to be winning. And I mean, outside of guys like Terry, like John Allen, Deron Payne, basically the handful of guys that are still left over from the past couple of years, it's basically a whole new like team. So it's good to get guys like Darryl Green and Joe Gibbs and whatever other legends you want to try it out there and bring around the team to talk to them, interact with them, because that just teaches them more of the history about the team that they might not have known coming into this. So, and it just makes them appreciate being here a little bit more, I feel like. So, and if they get a long-term contract, because obviously there's a lot of like one-year deals on the team right now. If they get a long-term deal, that's just kind of like, okay, now I can be a part of this legacy that Joe Gibbs and Darryl Green were a part of and talking about me about during training camp and whatnot. So I definitely think that it's a good thing, and hopefully there'll be more guys coming around. Like, I mean, there's already like obviously the B Mitches and now Darryl Green's back, but maybe guys like Dexter Manley and whoever else will like start coming back around, because those guys have been absent for basically like my whole life that I've been watching this team.
Yeah, the one crazy thing from the Hail Tales is that 1987 season with the replacement players, there was actually animosity. Obviously, if you've seen the movie Replacements, there was animosity between the picketing players, the pros, and then and between them and the replacements. And the replacements actually never got a ring for that year, even though
Do you think they really flipped someone's car in the parking lot?
No, I'm sure they didn't shoot up a car either. You know what I'm saying? But that was a great scene altogether. Leave my man alone. But the crazy thing is, back in 2016, they actually did supply them with Super Bowl rings. It was a change of heart with players, and that kind of, I think, is microcosm where we are today with the organization, kind of mending that relationship. Obviously, it's very important. Now, the next question that we have, Hall, this one's from Fly Guy. What 3 to 5 players do each of y'all really hope perform really well in the joint practice and the preseason game so they can improve their stock to make the team?
I'll say joint practice. I'll say I want to hear good things about Brandon Coleman, just because, again, left tackle was outside of like quarterback. Obviously, left tackle was the biggest question going into this offseason, and as everyone has said hundreds and thousands of times at this point, if they can get a franchise quarterback and a franchise left tackle in the same draft, and one of them be a third-round pick, then I mean that's just already, that's just gravy on top of already. So hopefully a great draft. And then I guess the second player I want to hear about, it's going to be an easy one, the easiest answer, but I'll say Jaden Daniels, just because obviously quarterback offense is an offensive league, and they have a good defense. Obviously over on the Jets, they have Sauce Gardner, a couple other good defensive backs, and I want to see what Terry. Actually, no, I won't even say Jahan. I won't even say Jaden. I'll say Jahan Dotson, just because he's been getting a lot of run in the offseason, as far as like he's been looking good in camp, blah, 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 blah. Now let's see what you can do against some other defensive backs that are rated a little bit higher than our defensive backs in the league, and hopefully that'll translate to what he's been doing in practice against our guys to their guys. And in the game, I'll say I want to see Jordan McGee make some flash plays and hear his name called, just because a lot of people have been talking high praise about him, and he's a linebacker, so you can't really tell what he's doing in practice, but he's going to flash in the game, so hopefully he stands out. Hey, man, great minds think alike. What you want me to do?
No, of course you had to pick Jordan McGee. I mean, of freaking course you had to. For me personally, like, because you went more so the joint practice route and you stole the game there, I'm going to primarily look at the game itself, and those being the lower end.
You said joint practice and game.
I know, but you know what I mean. So for me, I'll say Jeremy Reeves first and foremost at the free safety spot. I want to be able to see him have a really good game and put his stamp on this football team, saying this is why I'm here, kind of being that captain on the defense for those second to third team defensive formations and everything. Love to be able to see Jeremy Reeves perform well. Then secondly is Cole Turner. Want to see Cole Turner be able to grab the stage, the spotlight, given with his athletic ability, given the fact that they just released Armani Rogers, go out there and show them why that was a good decision in their mind. Obviously, Colson Yankoff is right behind him as well, Reed. Giggity. So I would really like to see Cole Turner perform incredibly well here. And then to finish that up, to wrap that off, oh, man, I would say Diami Brown. And I agree because Fly Guy wrote Diami Brown too. Because obviously Diami Brown being listed as a number 2X behind Terry McLaurin, this is his opportunity to show what he's been working hard on. And I hope that he takes that ability in this game and be able to produce with Marcus Mariota, with Jeff Driscoll, and be able to really produce in a big way to show the team why he deserves to be here.
Yeah, I want to see. I mean, there's only so many guys to pick now, but I want to see Jamin show out. I like just because Jamin's athletic tools get you so excited, and like that role could be so perfect for him as like an edge rusher who's that athletic, like move back and forth. And then another one, Mike Sainristil. Mike Sainristil. I just feel like he's gonna end up being my favorite player. The dude just gets it. He's such a dog. He's so cool. And then also Benson Ott. I know he struggled a little bit with drops kind of early on in camp. I want to see him kind of make his mark and kind of adjust to the NFL during both joint practices and the preseason game. And I mean, cutting Armani Rogers, who's kind of in a similar mold in that he can play like an H-back role. He's a little undersized compared to like Cole Turner and these guys. So I want to see Benson Ott really kind of go out there and show out.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Now let's going to.
No,
let's
you're not.
go,
You want him to fail.
Let's go to the Colonel, who has these questions for us. Thank you, sir. Brandon Coleman, WTF, Reed. Third-round pick, now talked about being our starting left tackle, unquestioned. How?
Tell you what, during the draft, everybody was all pissed off. Everybody said they didn't trade back up for an offensive tackle. They didn't take an offensive tackle at 36, whatever it was, and said they took a defensive tackle. They traded back. They picked a corner and a tight end. Yeah, those are needs, but where that H is the offensive tackle. And then they bring Brandon Coleman in here, and everybody, all of us Twitter scouts and all of us, armchair scouts, we all said that guy's kind of a guard. What the heck is going on? It looks like Adam Peters knows a little bit more in football than we do. Adam Peters and these guys, they knew what they were doing. It appears. I mean, obviously it's camp, but that's got to get you going. That gets me a little excited. That gets Kyle. I know this about Kyle. I don't think a lot of people do. That gets Kyle a little bit wet in the panties. He gets super excited. He's dripping everywhere, and it's a fun time. And if, like we talked about, you hit on the two most important positions on offense in the draft in one draft, you got to feel good about that. You got to think this is a hard reset, and it's a fantastic reset.
Man, but I was told that supplying him with weapons was the most important thing, Reed. But what happened with Brandon
Follow
Coleman?
the money.
Damn, he's taking shots at Hall right
left
now.
tackles nowadays. Follow the money.
Yeah.
Paul, go ahead, put Kyle in his place. Come on.
With Brandon Coleman, Colonel, what we have heard from recent guests and everything was that Brandon Coleman's size, day one, he just looks like a prototype left tackle. And his senior year at TCU, it was TCU, right? Or am I mixing that up? It was TCU. He was playing injured. And so when I looked at his tape, I was like, what is going on here? Like, he's been used at guard there in college and everything like that, but that was more so out of necessity for that offense. But I will say this, once I heard that he was playing injured, and that's where you can see the kind of missteps in his footwork, that's when I started walking back to criticism of the pick. Because I'm not going to lie to you, I was criticizing the pick at first. I called bull crap on the rumor that was out there that Washington was actually trying to trade up back into the first round to take a left tackle. Because what I have been saying all along is nothing they've done this offseason has said that left tackle is something that they are prioritizing with high-value assets, either in free agency or trades or in the draft. They felt comfortable with what they were going into, right? And so I called bullcrap on that. But looking at Brandon Coleman now and hearing what we've heard, one thing is it was the mental aspect of it. Like we heard Felix say that on Sunday night, saying the mental game for Brandon Coleman was the big question for him. Could he be able to match those pass sets, understand what he's going into, and have the game kind of slow down for him? And at this point, it looks like the game has slowed down for him. He's been overly impressive. And Coach Quinn said in his presser that both Jaden Daniels and Brandon Coleman earned the ability to be the starters on the unofficial depth chart. So I think without question, I think we're going to trust what they are seeing and go with what they want. And I think that Brandon Coleman, with the natural size, the athleticism, and given the knowledge of that offense and what they want to do, I think that he does fit what they want to do. And you don't ever feel bad about Cornelius Lucas being your backup. I think that is a great situation.
Yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much hit all the points. Yeah, I mean, like you guys said, he has the size and the athleticism to play left tackle. It was just all more of about the mental and can you adjust to the speed of the game, the speed of the rushers, and whatnot. And I'm definitely have cautious optimism, like a lot of people do right now, because a lot of the people that do the evaluating in the higher level said that he was a guard and could be like probably like a Pro Bowl / All Pro guard. But yeah, if Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and Bobby Johnson and those guys think that he can play left tackle and he can show that he can play left tackle and then at least be serviceable as a rookie as a third round pick, then I definitely think that the sky could like obviously there's a ceiling at some point because he is the third round pick, but with his athleticism, I do think that that ceiling could be definitely like Pro Bowl level type left tackle if he puts it all together and keeps developing. So, like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm waiting to see what the joint practices are like to see just exactly where he's at in his development. And yeah, after Thursday and after Thursday's joint practice, I'll have another opinion on where he's at, I guess.
Yeah, and I know that during
Hey,
Brandon.
I gotta go. I gotta get James ready for bed.
All right, dude.
All
With
right, take it slow.
with Brandon Coleman in particular, be,
Shocker.
you got to look at like Brandon Sheriff, for instance, because with Brandon Sheriff, at this point in time in training camp in his rookie year, he was transferred to guard by this time, right? And that's why I trust the coaching staff to make the right decision for what's going on at left tackle. I think they see him every day. They know they wouldn't be throwing him in there if they didn't believe that he could play the left tackle spot. And I think his athleticism and just natural athletic ability, just given with his arm, his size altogether, is what really seals the deal for them. And the mental game, obviously, like Felix said, is probably the real big step over into getting him started.
You know what I was just thinking about earlier? This is like kind of random, but we're talking about the O line, so it just kind of popped back in my head. And I don't want to like harp on the past, but
Oh, man.
do you realize in 2020 when Rivera got here, we had Trent Williams.
I
He
know.
was like, we got to let him go. Now he's like still the best left tackle in the league.
That was because of Bruce
Top
Allen,
7,
though.
8.
We do have to put the caveat in there.
I know. Had Morgan Moses. He's too old. He's over the hill. The dude's been on the Ravens. Now he's up there protecting Aaron Rodgers.
I know.
And we had Brandon Sheriff, who I know you can't pay a guard all that money, but that dude was an all-pro, like left guard or right guard, whatever it was.
When the rumor was
Brandon Sheriff, and then we had the center
here.
I know that was also. I know. I'm just saying, like, it's just crazy that like we had 4 positions locked up on the offensive line that were like top 5 of their positions. Maybe like Morgan's a little bit outside the top 5, but
Top 15.
Yeah, top 5, top 10 positions guys across the line. And here we are 4 years later, and we're like, well, we got Sam Cosmi.
Well, see, that's the funny thing is when we first originally hired Rivera, like we were all very excited about the leadership aspect of it, just having somebody with a good football mind, being able to run
If you weren't
things.
excited, then you're a liar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, but if you weren't saying you're excited, didn't like the move, then you're just a liar and you're just thinking about the last 4 years. And
hindsight's 2020, man. And obviously, given with whatever happened, but back then our one concern that we did have was the offensive line at Carolina deteriorated during the time of Rivera, and that's the one thing that we did not want to happen. Really, we want to be able to sustain the offensive line slowly but surely. You know, as much as anybody wants to call me Rivera, like whatever sympathizer and everything like that, I'm sorry that the guy went through a lot here. We should at least be looking at him saying thank you for coming into a circus and being able to put on at least somewhat of a show, with the whole thing being in flames, so to speak. But now let's move on to our next question. This one in the Discord, brother. This is from Deluxe. This was a really good question that he asked us, and it's pertaining to Coach Gibbs. So I want to get your opinion on this. If you had the opportunity to ask Joe Gibbs a question, what would it be?
That is a good question. I would ask him. I'd ask him. I don't know. You go first. I gotta think about that.
You got to think about it?
Yeah.
I would ask Coach Gibbs, and how are you able to get the most out of a player from differing backgrounds? You know, because Dexter Manley is 10 times different in personality-wise than Art Monk, right? because also that goes into the quarterback position as well. Like, because you have all these different personalities, different talent levels, but able to make the machine become one machine instead of it just a bunch of egotistical singles doing the best for themselves. How are you able to get that gelling, that machine gear working with all those personalities and being able to get the most out of them? And I'm sure that he'll say a lot about his positional coaches and everything else, but just I would love to be able to hear his idea as a leader, being able to lead guys of different personalities like that with very high, big egos and everything like that. How did you make those work? You know, as much as it probably is a boring question, but that's what I would ask him.
No, I mean, that's definitely a good question. That kind of actually just made me think of my question as you were saying that. I would ask him, how did he get to the point of his coaching style where like everyone says that he never cussed and he always like was kind of he was like a yeller, but it was always like a gentle yell. He was never like a cuss you out type of guy or never get in your face and drag your face mask around like da da da, that type of coach.
I bet that.
And I would ask
I've had that
him.
happen.
Oh, me too, many a times.
Just because I didn't
would
fire
ask
low
him-
out of my stance. That's
I did it because I ran the wrong route because I was just head in the clouds, just thinking about another play, ran the wrong route. But I would ask him, how did he get to his coaching style, like his point of coaching style? Like, did it take him years to kind of hone it in and be that kind of nicer, like soft-spoken coach, but still gonna like get on you and light a fire under you? Or was he at any point in time in his life ever a guy that was gonna get in your face and grab your face mask and yell at you? That's what I want to ask him because everyone always says such great things about him. I want to know if he has like just some single mean bone in his body.
I will say this, that the public view of Joe Gibbs is much different.
Oh,
with
I know. The
and
players
things.
will tell you. I know. Guys like Brian Mitchell say all the time.
Yeah,
Like,
he got on dudes. Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Now, the next question from Arch Hall. Thoughts on the NFC East data mining our players? The Giants signed Holmes, and Philly claimed Armani Rogers. Good for him.
Yeah, glad they got claimed. I mean, yeah, good for them. I think it's more of this a product of the waiver wire where they're like, hey, we need some more camp bodies. These guys were in the division. We've already seen a little bit of tape on them because we've seen them in the preseason, but they're inside the division. We have a little bit more knowledge on them. Let's put a claim in on them, bring them in here. If we get something out of them, good for us. If not, we'll send them on their way. So I just think it's more of a waiver wire priority order, and them just happen to be going to those teams. But I mean, like you said, good for them for obviously getting picked up fairly quickly.
Yeah, look, I'll say this, Arch. Let them mine. Even if they are mining, even if they are trying to figure out some of our signals, what we like to do in a general aspect, right? Even if they want to do stuff like that, let them. We're still going to kick their teeth in, at this point. And what I mean by kick the teeth in, we're not going to bludgeon them on the scoreboard. I mean, I would love to see that happen, but I don't want to put unrealistic expectations on this team. I just mean in a physical aspect, play-by-play basis. You can know, the best thing is like everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? That's what Mike Tyson said. And that's what we're bringing to the table. I mean, if you saw the excerpts from Joe Witt's press conference talking about, talking is talking, but you got to do it, like you got to do. And I said something similar on this podcast not too long ago, and that's why I just love Joe Witt and everything that he says. I know everyone says that, but like what he says is like how I feel about being a defensive coordinator, what you expect out of your players. And so, dude, I just think that let them, dude. I just think that this offense, this defense, that nothing could stop what's coming. You know what I mean? So guess what? Get ready for it. Strap yourselves in. You're going to need your seatbelt on.
Yeah. No, I mean, one thing about Joe Witt, that's funny because, like, a lot of people get up in the podium. They're like, I got to do this little weekly thing. Like, they just do a lot of coach speak and kind of one-word answers or a couple-word answers. They're just kind of like Jack Del Rio, where he's just like,
they talk in third person.
Yeah. Can we get this over with? Like, I don't really want to be here. Talk in third person. Sound like you're saying a lot of motivational stuff, but it's really just a bunch of like word salad.
Yeah.
I feel like whenever Joe gets in front of the microphone, you're like, yeah, that dude like legitimately means what he's like saying right now. So like that's what I love about him.
Like, that guy might punch a reporter. Like,
I would not be surprised. He gets up and tries to like body slam Sam 48 through a table.
No, for Sam. Don't do that to Sam. Sam's a nice guy. The next question in the Discord from Tim Towner. Will Washington pick a discarded player from another team? If so, for which player groups?
It's tough to say he's going to get cut because I'm not like looking around all other 31 teams on like camp battles and this guy's in danger and whatnot. But I would say more than likely, just because there's so many different coaches from so many different teams and so many different stops throughout the league, so many different backgrounds of teams that there's bound to be one player that gets cut at, let's say they need a offensive lines. Everyone's like so gung ho on offensive line. We need a lot of depth there because injuries happen. Say a left tackle that they think can be a guy that can step in. Say something happens to Cornelius Lucas, or can maybe be Cornelius Lucas, but a little bit better. That's I think that one of these coaches will be like, hey, I've worked with this guy, or I've been around this guy within the building. He's been on my offense. He can bring X, Y, Z to the table, and I think he'll be a good addition. So they'll probably bring him in. So I would say there's probably a good chance because more than likely every team or a lot of teams throughout the league are gonna add guys that got cut from other teams, and I'd say Washington's probably going to be one of them.
Well, I think the easy answer here, Tim, is kicker. Given with I think
true.
like what 20 teams have 2 kickers on their roster at the moment, so that could obviously rear its ugly head, which everyone already knows. The other one I would say that could be not underappreciated, but like a surprise would be running back. Just given with obviously Chris Rodriguez being here, Jeremy McNichols as well. No disrespect to those guys. Know that they're working hard, but that's one of those positions where if you can add more talent, you're always going to do that, especially if these other teams are kind of loaded. Like Denver could be walking away from Javonte Williams. And obviously the injury to him is very different, has set him back here and there. But everyone knows that Sean Payton also is like kind of one of those fly off the handle kind of guys. So I think like running back could be one of those positions where you say, well, if you need a really, really good blocking back, or do you feel comfortable with Chris Rodriguez in case something happens to Brian Robinson, right? So that's something to keep your mind on, I think. And then the other one is corner. We don't truly know what's going to go on at corner. I think that they're confident in their abilities as a coaching staff to be able to find the talent and be able to untapped potential, be able to get the most out of their guys, put them in their strength, put them in a position to succeed. We've heard that many, many times with this coaching staff. But I also think that if you have a very capable person you're very comfortable with that you could insert into the roster, I think corner is not a bad one as well. Now the next question from Tim Towner. The NFL Top 100 has Terry at 97, Wagner at 57, and John Allen at 54. Personally, I think this is pointless. But if you had a chance to look at this, what is the craziest wheels-off ranking you saw?
I mean, it's got to be Aaron Rodgers at, what was he, like 94, 92, whatever he was. I mean, if you're just basing it off of, because clearly it's based off of how the type of year that you had in the season prior. And I think I was watching like one of these talk shows, they were talking about it. They said they do the voting in November, like pretty much midway through the season. So it would make sense that a lot of people would vote Tyreek Hill the number 1 player in the league because at that point he was on pace for like 2,000 receiving yards, which is like never been done. He's about to break a whole bunch of records and whatnot. And I know people were flipping out about Mahomes at 4, but again, they were not struggling, but he wasn't having a Mahomes type year up to that point, especially in the regular season, throughout the whole regular season. So
He still won the Super Bowl.
I would just say a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who literally played 4 snaps, for him to make the top 100 players is just like mind-blowingly asinine and crazy to me. But again, this is one of those lists. It's list season. It was list season, football season now. It was list season. You got to put some type of content out, and it is what it is.
Come on, man. It's the fact that they had the best wide receiver in the league listed at 97, Tim. That's the issue here. And Terry McLaurin continuing to be shadow banned from league rankings, from public view, and the mindset in that regard. Like you heard Callow kind of talk about how you kind of look at last year, you give them the grain of salt, you give them the benefit of the doubt for last season. And Terry McLaurin continues to produce. Even though it was a catastrophic, Sam Howell was sacked almost every other play. The fact that, and throwing uncatchable balls left and right, the fact that he would still get over 1,000 yards and be productive, make the catches that he does, it's Terry McLaurin, man. He deserves to be in the top 10. I'll tell you that. before we get out of here, dude, we're gonna be recording on Sunday night. I got something going on Sunday during the day that I didn't tell you about. I'll tell you about after we stop recording here, but I'm really excited for it. But Sunday evening is our next time. So going into this preseason game, Hall, what are you looking forward to?
I am looking forward to, number one thing I'm looking forward to is everyone coming out of this game and practices tomorrow healthy. I want everyone to come out, come back to Ashburn, back to the DMV. Health. I'm not going to say 100% healthy because obviously you're not going to be 100% healthy after a game, but be healthy enough that you can still be able to practice and get the work in leading up for the week for the Dolphins preseason game. But outside of health, I would say I'm looking for hopefully good reports about the offensive line and doing good against the Jets defensive line.
Yeah, for me, of course, I want to be able. I think health is obviously the biggest thing, but for this week in particular, no fights. I saw a video today of DK Metcalf hitting his teammate in the head with a helmet.
That was crazy.
Yeah, it's just like crazy. Can we stop punching each other in the helmet? You know, that's only going to hurt.
Speaking of that, I just saw this video at Appalachian State. Some dude did the same thing Myles Garrett did. He took his helmet off. Same thing DK did. It was just smacked the dude in the side of the head with it. It was like Jesus.
And then Malik Neighbors and Kirby Joseph throwing hands with helmets still on. Can you guys stop doing that? You know, that's got to hurt, man. You're going to hit in the face,
especially with the big padded. You got the big padded helmets on too, so it's like,
what are you gonna do? You're like you only have this much space to be able to get your fist in. I'm pretty sure it's not gonna get in there, dude. I'm just saying. And then the other thing is the aggression. You know, because like Joe had said, you could talk the talk, you could talk about being aggressive, you could talk about flying up, having an impact when you do make a hit. Being able to show that aggression on a play-by-play basis. You know, I want to see guys out there on Saturday like Reed whenever there's a hot dog around. You know, I want you to be a dog. I want to see guys flying around, hair on fire, looking to make a play wherever the ball is. You're a heat-seeking missile. I don't want to see 4 Burgundy helmets on every ball carrier, fast as heck, flying around with a purpose and with the mindset that seek and destroy. And I would love to be able to see that defensively, that aggressiveness being implemented into these players, and especially on the defensive side and on the offensive line. You know, we want to see that aggression. If one thing that an offensive line can really over-project on based on what is publicly viewed about them is aggression. If you do have that aggressiveness, it really does help you out and just the respect factor on the football field. Because a lot of people will tell you, players can beat all pros. Like in that replacement episode, there's guys who are all pros that the replacement players are going against, and they're balling out. Like Anthony Allen was going against an all-pro corner and had over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. And he was a guy who was like an undrafted free agent that was on I think the Falcons roster. Washington picks him up as a replacement, and in the first game that the replacement's playing, he's putting up those kind of numbers with an all-pro on the field. So just going to show that the respect factor is so huge in the NFL. And so if you gain that respect of that aggressiveness, that's going to be something. It plays into the mind of the mental game going on a play-by-play basis. Like with Ray Lewis later on in his career, he wasn't Ray Lewis of old, but you still knew that wasn't a lion that you wanted to go tackle. That you didn't want to go in with a half step. You didn't want to go in lackadaisical going into that block because he's going to put you on your ass like Ocho Cinco, which is one of the funniest videos and talking about it. And Ocho is just hilarious in himself. But so for me, the aggressiveness on defense and the offensive line, I really am looking forward to and seeing how that is implemented. As much as we don't, and obviously I think you hit it very well. It's health. It's always been my concern about the preseason is health, because the players don't get paid for preseason. It's not obviously for the lower tier guys that are battling for roster position, if not here on other teams. It's very important to them. I respect the heck out of that. But for the starters, it's just something that seems futile and just seems like it just seems like one of those things, like a family reunion type thing. It's like one of those things you just have to do. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. We didn't have any crazy communication issues or network issues, which I'm happy about. We didn't have any word bombs on this episode, which I'm very happy about. Reed said he was flirting with a certain word that he was going to say. He's like, I'm going to say it. I'm gonna say, I'm like, no, you're not. So I'm gonna let Hall wail on you. You know what I'm saying? All right, everybody.
I didn't know he was gonna say that word. I thought it was another word.
He was just kidding. All right, everybody. That's gonna wrap us up for this episode. We'll see you guys on Sunday evening. Stay tuned for it. We're really excited for it. All right, everybody. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
And we'll see you guys on Sunday night. Have a safe, great week. Enjoy the game on Saturday at noon on NFL Plus. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.